Hey there, I am so excited to be working with you on buying your very first house. I wanted to share a little bit about what the process looks like so that you're prepared, you know what to expect, and you can reference this back anytime you forget a piece in the process. And this just lets you go at it at your own pace. So, the very first thing, we've probably already talked about financing. So, if you aren't pre approved quite yet or you're working out those details, no problem. But once we get set on that and we know exactly what your numbers look like and what you're looking for, then we'll go out and start looking at properties, and I will explain to you in more detail about what specifically to expect in this market that we're currently in. So we'll talk about that, and then I wanted to give you the just broad overview of what we're going to do together throughout this process. So after we find the house that you want to make an offer on, in most cases, speed is your best friend. So if it's you find the house that you love and we want to make an offer, the thing I'm going to do right away is call that listing agent and get the scoop on that house. So because before I can advise you properly on what to offer and what terms we should put in the offer, I want to know exactly what's going on. Has that house been listed for 60 days or 2 days? Do they have offers on the table currently? What's the seller situation? What's most important to them in addition to price? There are so many of those things that are important to know. And so I want you to know on the back end, those are the things and those are the conversations that I'm having with those listing agents. So once I have that conversation, then I'm going to come back to you and let you know all the intel that I just collected about that seller so that we can structure an offer to hopefully and obviously try and get that accepted. So I'm going to help you through that. It's going to feel at that point, when you get to that point of making an offer, you're going to be really nervous and excited and all the things, and it's going to feel like it's a big deal. But let me tell you, there are numerous contingencies throughout that process and throughout that deal where if something goes wrong, we can get you out of the offer or that deal. So making the offer it's going to feel like it's a really, really big step, but we have to get it accepted first, right? And then that's what takes us into the next steps. So we're going to make that offer, and if it gets accepted, it's going to then start a number of timelines. And specifically, the first would be your earnest money. Earnest money, if you don't already know, is what you put down in the very beginning. And so you want to know that it's liquid. This has to be in your account or gift funds from family or friends, but it actually physically comes out of your or your family member's account and goes into a title company. And that title company hangs on to that money until you either close and then that money goes towards your down payment, or let's say we have an inspection, the foundation's crumbling and you decide, okay, I'm not buying this house. Then you would get that money back as long as, we back out during that home inspection contingency. So your earnest money is typically about 1% of the purchase price. So let's just say, for example, you made a $400,000 offer and that's got accepted. Your earnest money you can expect to be $4,000. So that's in general for most loan types. Now, of course, there's other ways to go about that and that can be changed, but in general, it's 1% of the purchase price. So your earnest money typically has to be deposited within 3 business days of when your offer gets accepted. So that money has to be available in your account. Then at that same time, your inspection period starts as soon as you get your offer accepted. Now, what we do with that is if you have a particular inspector that you love and want to use, great. This is completely your choice. If you don't know anybody, don't worry about that. I've got a handful of vendors and people that I can recommend to you, and I can help you get that scheduled. In most cases, the inspections that you're going to want are a full home inspection, a sewer scope if it's on city sewer, as well as a radon test. Now, if you're buying a property with a septic tank, then you'll want to get, a septic inspection. And if it's on a well, then you'll have a well test as well. But in general, the main inspections that you're going to be having are full home, sewer scope, and radon. The full home inspection in most cases, depending on the size of the house, affects the pricing of that, but just expect anywhere between $500 to $600 for a full home inspection. For a sewer scope, roughly around $150. And for a radon test, same price, around $150 for a radon test. Now, do you have to do all of those? No, not necessarily. I just highly recommend those are the ones that, in the Pacific Northwest that we use and do most often. So prepare for that to either be on a credit card or money coming out of your account for those services. You do not get that money back if you decide not to purchase the property. You're just paying for the service whether or not the deal actually goes through. Now, once you get your earnest money deposited, once we have your home inspection, I'm going to give you time to look at that home inspection. We typically get that back within 24 hours of when those things happen. Radon tests, just so you know, so depending on when that gets scheduled, a radon box has to be set in the house for 48 hours. So if we have time to get that in there prior to the home inspection, then we'll have all the reports at the same time. If we have to set the radon box at the home inspection, then we'll have to wait 48 hours until we get that report back. So once we get all reports back, I give you some time to take a look at that. Highlight any questions you have. Make sure that you read over the report and, write down the most important things to you in that report that you want to have addressed or at least have questions answered. Now, don't forget, if you decide to attend the home inspection, what I recommend in most cases is that home buyers come towards the last 30 minutes to hour of the home inspection. On average, home inspections typically last about 2.5 to 3 hours. So it's generally best if you can let the inspector focus on the house itself and go through the whole thing and make sure he's focused on writing down all the notes and all the things about the property. And then you can come in at the end, ask him any questions you have. He or she is going to give you a really good summary of their findings and let you know if there's anything major to be concerned about. So you get that opportunity not only to get a second look at the property, which most buyers I find want to do, but also have that conversation with the inspector. Now, some buyers that I come across or work with don't care about that because you're going to get the full report anyway. So whatever you decide is totally fine. That's just in general what I recommend. So once you get that report and have a chance to take a look at it, I'm also going to read through it, and then we'll plan a time that we can talk over the phone and discuss all of your concerns and questions that you have. And then based on your particular situation and the offer that you have and the current market, we'll discuss what's reasonable to ask for, if anything. So in most cases and in most markets, we're looking for things that are strictly health and safety concerns or major big ticket items that, we want the seller to take care of prior to closing. Now, we can do a combination of, or one or the other, of either asking for the seller to repair something prior to closing. We can ask for a credit for repairs. So if your entire closing costs aren't already covered by the seller, we can ask for a credit for them to credit towards your closing costs so that you would have that money to then go do the repairs after closing, or we can do a combination thereof. So lots of different ways that we can go about that. And again, I will discuss that with you when the time comes and give you the best advice based on your current situation and the current market. Once we get through the home inspection, so that those first 2 weeks are going to feel like there's a lot going on, a lot of decisions to be made, and it might feel a little hectic and chaotic. So just be prepared for that. But after those 2 weeks, and once we get through that inspection period, and most of the times we do, most of the time we can come up with a middle ground and get into agreement with the seller. So once and if we do that, then you can take a breath and know that the rest of the transaction typically is fairly smooth sailing. So if things were all to go well, we would have the appraisal. So the appraisal would happen after the home inspection in most cases. And then once that appraisal comes back, there's two things we're looking for. Number one, we're looking for the house to appraise at value, at the price that you agreed to pay for it, or above. If that happens, we're good to go and all is well. The second thing is conditions. So let's say if a condition comes back on that appraisal, so let's say the water heater wasn't double strapped for earthquakes. So then the lender may say, or the appraiser may say, hey, before we'll close on this loan, that water heater has to be double strapped. So that would be a condition. Maybe the value is fine, but 1 or 2 repairs have to happen before they'll close on that loan. If that happens, then we just go back to the listing agent and the sellers and say, hey, in order for us to close, sorry, sellers, you have to take care of X repair in order for that to happen. And usually, no big deal, in most cases. And usually the major things we've already addressed in the inspection period anyway. So typically, not a lot of conditions come up in the appraisal report. So another thing too, a lot of people worry about the appraisal. Oh, like, is it going to appraise for the price that we offered? So it's one of those things where we just cross that bridge when we get there. So I advise my clients, don't worry. I know it's hard. You're going to probably think and stress about it, but there's really nothing we can do until we get that report back. So there's really no use stressing about it until we see it, and then we can deal with it if that time comes. And I've got a number of strategies to handle those situations. So I'll go over that if that case arises. Once your appraisal is done, then it's really smooth sailing the rest of it. You might, throughout the process, I want you to be looking at your emails, for that 30, 45 days that it takes to close on your property. Just be in your emails at least once a day, because the lender may be asking you for updated bank statements, pay stubs, or explanations for certain deposits or whatever. So there's a number of things that it's super important to give those documents in a timely manner to the lender. So you want to make sure that you're checking your emails. And but through the rest of it, the lender on the back end is just making sure that your loan is getting through the approval process. And then once we get that approval, they're going to send you electronically what they call a closing disclosure. You're going to get that in your email, and you're going to want to sign it the same day that they send that to you. And that's typically anywhere between a week or two prior to your actual close date, just depending. So you're going to sign that, and then there has to be at least a minimum of a 3-day wait period before the actual close date, and you go in to sign documents. Now, so your signing appointment, just be prepared. I know you want to have it scheduled in advance as much as possible. We're working with your work schedules and all of that, but title companies do not contact you to sign your final paperwork until the lender sends final documents to the title company. And often that's 24 to 48 hours before the close date. Sometimes it's on the close date. So just know that, hopefully you can be a little bit flexible, or worst case scenario, if you can't get out of work or you're on vacation, we can get a mobile notary to come to you for your signing appointment. So once you sign, that does not necessarily mean that we're closed that day. Once you sign, then the title company has to take that paperwork and send it to the county recorder's office to make it official. So whatever date is your closing date on the contract, that's your close date. Now, typically, if you're purchasing a property in Oregon, you get possession on the close date at 5 p.m. Unless otherwise stated. In Washington, it's 9 p.m. unless otherwise stated on the close date. So just be prepared for that. Now, if there's possession, if the seller, you agreed to give the seller possession after closing, then of course, you would get possession 5 p.m. on whatever that possession date would be. So once we actually officially close, the title company and myself will let you know, and then we'll make arrangements to go get your keys and celebrate and go into your house. So I hope this was helpful in just describing the basic steps of the process. When we meet, I will go over any questions you have and be more specific about your situation and what's going on in the current market. So I'll talk to you soon.